You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have a friend of the podcast and an author and just all around wonderful human being, Matthew Paul Turner, back on the show with us again today to talk about his new book, All the Colors of Christmas. Matthew, thanks for being on with us. Would you remind our listeners a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and all that stuff?
Hello. No, it's awesome to be back, guys. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I am Matthew Paul Turner. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I write children's books and have 3 kids. And I just, honored to be here. And I don't know about you, but I'm really ready for Christmas. I'm not even sure what, if I'm honest, I always am a little ready for Christmas because like by the time November hits, I like to get into that kind of mood. But there does seem to be this added level of excitement and anticipation for just kind of having that goodwill to all humans message in our life. And so so I'm a writer.
No, I'm with you. That's kind of been my anticipation, getting out of October and into November, right? Of, oh, good, we're thinking about Christmas. We're going to be preparing for through Advent, and it's going to be different this year because of everything that's going on in the world and the pandemic. And being United Methodist, our bishop is Bishop Karen Oliveto in our conference, and she posted the other day, if we have the opportunity this year to actually fully embody the Christmas story and what it means to wait and to be anxious and, everything that comes along with it, rather than just that normal, oh, hey, we're going to do Advent and then we're going to have this big, loud and vibrant Christmas Eve service. And in reality, we actually get to be in that waiting and get to be in that space of waiting for hope to come. And I was like, oh, yes, you're let's do more of this.
And I think that we've spent most of 2020 waiting.
Yeah.
In that way. And I think that we can't undervalue the idea of how many people feel alone right now. Mm-hmm. How many people who don't have families or don't have spouses or don't have like a built-in home community, and so like going outside and going and hanging out is a risk, like that they take a risk. And then you have the political climate that we're in, and the social justice climate that we have we are watching happen and participating in, and then we all have our own personal stories happening. Like it is like there's so many layers to the waiting that there's a lot of good that churches and people of faith could seek out opportunities to do this Christmas, like and use it as a way to engage and bring and remind us that we're waiting for that hope. And so it's been it's cliche now that we make fun of 2020, but it's not a cliche, like it's a real thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that making light of it is almost a detriment to all the pain that people are feeling. Like, and it's just, I think about the grandparents, the huge number of grandparents who have not had a circle of people around them, or because they're afraid that they could, maybe they're high risk, or there's lots of reasons. And so all of those layers, they all have like individuals in them, and it's a big thing. And so I feel like I think we definitely need Christmas to remind us of that waiting, that we're not the first people to go through something like this. I feel like we are that sometimes we lose sight of that, this is not the end of the world. It is, this isn't, Walking Dead. This is this is real life, and it's an opportunity for us to do good in other people's lives and bring joy and do it in a social, in a good way that is, safe.
Yeah. Well, and I think so too. I mean, it's causing us to be creative and do it differently, but also be more intentional about how we prepare and celebrate for the coming of hope. So I think too often we get in that rut of, oh, there's Christmas concerts and parties and school and church and this and that, and we just go through those motions waiting for that Christmas Eve service so we can hold our candle up, sing Silent Night, and go open presents.
Have the feels and go open gifts. Yeah.
Right. Right. And yet now we intentionally have to slow down and be silent and be alone and wait for that hope to come. And I think there's a really beautiful gift in that, I think.
And I think it is good. I think it's really a good space for the church and people who are leading, group spirituality in America, to be pushed out of their comfort zone and not sit in that safe place of just doing the same exact thing. I think that, there's a chance that we look back on this season of life that we're in, and that it might grow us. And I on the flip side of that, I hate that idea that we have to go through something so awful for so many people that, to grow. But it is a time when, throughout history, when communities go through tragic and hard seasons as a community, there are lessons and there are graces that appear in the hardship of those moments. And I think we've all probably, like most of us, have experienced them. I mean, this has been a long time. I mean, none of us thought that we would still be, when this first started. I mean, when I think about how, our president wanted to reopen churches for Easter, wouldn't that be great to have churches open for Easter? And now we're all prepping for Christmas. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's befuddling to me. And so I have lots of respect for you all, for, those people who are leading communities and trying to keep their people safe and trying to keep their employees paid and trying to keep their committees happy. I don't even understand. Like, it's just there's a lot.
Well, and I like the way you talk about, like, that we have to go through, that there's a sense of growing through a great pain for growth to happen. And I always think of the seed, and like when a seed happens, there's a lot of pain that as the seed comes out of its shell. Like, I mean, we don't imagine that being painful, but it is. Like, I mean, there's a separation there. And I mean, you can, even in childbirth,
I mean, the childbirth, yeah.
Like, I mean, like, everything that happens with growth becomes like, there's pain. I mean, we all grew up, like, we had those, the body pains of growth. And we think about, like, you just didn't have, like, as a teenager, you have those, growing pains as your body's growing. Like, that's painful in some ways. And I think even in the middle of this season, like, that's where, like, I love that we're ending, like, I mean, we're kind of in that time of Christmas of that hope, and we're leaning into it a little more. And yes, we are having to do things a little bit different and creative. But I think there's some hope in that for the future, and that this will mean that we, some of those things that we've been doing that either we don't like, or we just like, it's a tradition and, we're going to, we have to do it, even though nobody likes doing it. Maybe this will be a time to start new things that will allow us to have, that will help us grow in so many different ways, and lean into that a little more.
But I love how, comparing it to the first story,
Mm-hmm.
And in that waiting period of, you know, and that not knowing, man, that's a beautiful picture for where so many of us feel right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's where we are. And so yeah, it's been one of those years where on one hand, it's awesome that I have a new book coming out. On the other hand, it's 2020, and so everything's harder. Like everything, you know, releasing a you know, because like the pandemic has affected every aspect of all of what we do and how we do it. And so, you know, going to Target feels like you are performing an undercover operation where you want to go in. If you God forbid, if you have a kid with you, or one of your children with you, you know, watching them and making sure they're not touching anything or licking anything, right? Well, they're wearing masks, but you know what I mean. But it is like making sure they have their masks on and they're on properly, and it's a challenge. I think that I think the one, and we were talking about this before we got on, is the one beautiful thing that I've noticed is how amazing my kids have thrived. Like, I don't know, like it has been harder for me to walk through some of this and to think about how it affects them than it has been for them. Like they, you know, the sibling arguments that are happening in our home right now, like it is enough to drive me insane. Like, I mean, they have been around each other for so many times. So it's not like so much time. So it's not like it's perfect. I don't want to like say that. But to know that they have hope and they can think about the positive things, and they can see, you know, put a good spin on things and still keep their childlike spirit is a beautiful thing. And I know that that's not true for every single household, but I think so many of us have been able to find some hope in just watching our kids thrive, even as we find it really hard to do with it. So yeah, so like doing like regular normal things like releasing a book is just different than it was.
Well, I think that one of the things that we've kind of, at least I've noticed and witnessed as I've walked with parents and, or, you know, even myself as a parent, is how much our children take in how we are. And so like you have kids that like have no problem wearing a mask or calling out like, hey, that person's not wearing a mask. And like, you know, they're saying the things that sometimes they say the things that you would like to say, and they can say it because they're kids, and everybody's like, oh, that's, you know, your parents taught you well, or, oh my gosh, your parents are one of those. And so like, I have to admit, I've been impressed with my children and the way that they've handled this, and that they definitely are reflecting the values that I have modeled, which makes me feel good at times. But then also I'm like, oh my gosh, I've really taught them to like be like super crazy about wearing a mask, and I'm okay with that. And
you know what? You haven't taught them to be super crazy about wearing a mask. You've taught them to be kind to the people who are in their circle. Like, this isn't about, like, I feel like even in our conversations about it, we think about it in the sense that, you know, it's this strict thing. Like, there are cultures around the world who live their life wearing masks because the smog is so bad, or because there's an infection that they're just in their own community. And so like, we as Americans are so privileged in so many ways. All of us should just embrace this a little bit of humility. Mm-hmm. And so, and just in how we talk about it, I'm commending you, because like you are teaching your kids to love your neighbor, and there's no, like, yes, you're wanting to keep them safe too, but in reality, we're trying to keep each other safe. And when I don't wear a mask, it's not about me, it's about all the people around me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
my favorite thing is to take my 7-year-old to the grocery store and just let her start pointing fingers. Yes. My older two are a little quieter about it because they've learned to have that filter and be like, oh, we don't say these things out loud. Not my 7-year-old. She's like, Mommy, can we get out of this aisle because that person's not wearing the mask and I don't want the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And we'll say it loudly.
We a couple times this summer I've taken the kids to a park, and we always like sit in the car and we count the people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have come up with our own little ratio. And then my daughter pipes up, well, we're gonna wear masks anyway, Daddy. I don't want these people to think we're Trump supporters. Well,
my kids have said very similar things.
How sad is it that we have that's what it's become? Like when we see somebody that's not wearing a mask, like that is there is this assumption,
right?
So it's a shame that we had to politicize it, that it's become this thing. So
right, yeah, and it's it's a shame, but it's also telling that our kids pick up on that, right? Because it's not an active conversation that we just constantly have in our home,
right?
But it's one that they pick up on, right?
Yeah, and
they're not blind to the reality that they see.
Yeah, totally. And we had to make our oldest son was going to a private school, and the private school went back, and they were mandating masks for certain aspects or certain things, but like not in other. So we had to make the really hard choice to not let him go back. And it's and so far it was like, we believe it was the right choice. Like it's not like, it isn't about it's about us finding ways to love people and to see, like, I certainly, I was talking to I had counseling, but right before I got on here, so I'm in a really great state to do this. But I know I was talking to my counselor, like, it's like how easy it is for me to make assumptions and project my own opinions onto somebody else,
right? Because
they are or they aren't doing something. And and that line between wanting to teach my kids how to love their neighbor well, and not judge those who aren't, not like, how do you do that? Like when you find that the process of loving your neighbor and there's an actual thing that you can do that makes real sense, and then you see other people not doing it. It's how do you fight that? How do I teach them to fight the desire to judge those people? Because I'm fighting it too. Like, I mean, like I'm having to make, take steps back and not, because at the end of the day, the judgment, it's not like I'm shouting my judgment. It's all internal, but that internal judgment is going to affect me as a human and my heart. And so that's where that's the hard line and how to do that well with your kids. So
it is. And our kids, we know all too well, they'll humble us really, really quick, right?
Totally.
They'll do or say something, you're like, don't. Oh, I do that.
Yeah.
Crap, they learned it from me.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, and so I want to sway a little bit to talk about the book, because I want to honor your time, because that kind of reminds me, like, yesterday morning when my youngest was reading it, and she pointed out, like, watching her have that reality of how many colors are in Christmas. Like, I always get my wife definitely gets all the credit for all that stuff. Like, that's definitely something she helped them see or help them understand. But like, it kind of leans into this a little bit, like, when we provide our children tools and resources to, like, be good humans, when we see them being a good human and they're doing it, like, it makes you feel good. And you've got this great book, All the Colors of Christmas. Got my copy here. Tell us a little bit about the book a little bit.
I'd love to. The Christmas book it's the first book that my publisher came to me and said, Matthew, would you would you be interested in writing a book about Christmas, or, a Christmas book? And I had to think about it a little bit, because I didn't want to get set into a formula where instead of being inspired to create an idea, the idea is given to me and then I'm, doing work. And so, like, there is that fine line that I as a writer, like, walk. But I told them, I said, let me think about it a little bit. Let me see if I can throw some ideas together. And I actually, there's one line, right before I get to the Christmas is you part, it ends with this idea of us all being a color. This, the concept that we're all a unique hue of God's story, and that what we do and how we love and how we give, all of those things color Christmas too. But before I honestly came up with the idea for writing one little line. It was God within a baby's skin. And I sat on that line for a while, and I don't know why. I just was like, what can that mean? And then it just, like, wow, like, what, the baby's skin, it was brown. Jesus was brown. So could I do this book about all the colors, and how we celebrate those colors, how we see them, how we honestly, like, in some cases we don't even realize, it's not like I sit and think that a sleigh is normally red. I mean I know that it is, but what other things? And so Christmas became, like, there's so many colors that are associated with it, and so many ways those colors blend in and they work in, and we don't even realize it. It became this really fun way to kind of just, like, start the idea of Christmas is red. It's a shiny new sled. It's candy canes and toy store lanes and sprinkles on sweetbread. And it was like, I worked with a different rhyme scheme than I normally work with, and I took a little, like, from a writer standpoint, I took a few risks in the sense of just, like, rhyme schemes. I tried not to be so, like, stiff with just making sure every little thing was perfect. I wanted to create a book that helped us feel Christmas, because that is what, as a kid, I remember loving Christmas, not because of the gifts, not because of, like, getting to put up the tree or whatever. There was a feeling that I felt, and I wanted to feel it as soon as my parents would let me, by, like, turning on the Christmas music, sitting by the, putting up the Christmas tree. And I just wanted all of that feeling in there. And I think that using colors was a really great way to reflect on all of those things that we feel. Like, I love this book because I wanted to capture both the newness of how we celebrate the season, but also, like, for there to be a nostalgic idea as well. So when I got to, Christmas is red and green and gold, and I really tried hard to do yellow, but I couldn't. And then, so there were a couple colors in there that I had to, like, say, you know what, there aren't enough words that go with this, and there are not enough things that make it work. And then I worried. You have no idea how many times, like, how long when I get to the place where Christmas is white. Like, I had so many friends, like, read it over with me and work with me just to make sure that I was celebrating the color and doing it well, because I knew that Christmas is brown was coming. Like, I knew that was the next color that I was going to be to introduce to. So, like, we had we had cultural people like look over the book to make sure that we were really celebrating the story well, and because I knew that when I got to Christmas is Brown, I mean, it's pine cones scattered round. It's candy, it's something corn and copper French horns. And then, it goes into this idea of like, and it's a manger soft with hay and a donkey's gentle bray. It's God within, a baby's skin on the very first Christmas day. And when I finished that whole idea, I cried like a baby, because it just it flies in the face of how we have often seen Jesus in our culture, and I think that how we see Jesus from the color of his skin matters, and it should matter, and we should recognize that and celebrate that. And so it is, this book, my hope is that it introduces kids to all the various colors, all the different ways we can see color. Like blue was like, blue is like one of my favorites in the book because it means several different things. And I think this year, when I think that there's a lot of us that are looking forward to Christmas. There's a lot of people that are not looking forward to Christmas. Like it's going to be a very blue Christmas for them. Like Christmas is hard. And so this year it's going to be very important for us to balance that anticipation and that excitement that we feel, that we're kind of like getting, for those of us who have children, that, it's really important because we see how excited they are. I mean, most of it's greedy excitement at first, and it gets into, a little less greedy as it gets into it. But I mean, it's still, it's hard to balance those ideas of, acknowledging that not everyone is excited about Christmas. It's the Christmas season, especially now because they feel like they've had a really hard year. And a lot of people are suffering loss, and a lot of people are going through really difficult times. And it is okay for us to be hopeful and celebrate the season and still hold space for people who can't or don't or aren't in that same mindset. And so, I hope that people know that every little moment in the book is intentional, and they feel it, and they let those little lines sink in, because it is and then Jillian Gamble, like, she just really brought, it feels like Christmas. Somebody wrote a review on Amazon that just said, I taste Christmas, I smell it, it has that kind of, that feel. So
I love that, and I don't know where to start because there's so much there, and that's, I think as just adults that we miss an opportunity, whether we have kids or not, to go back and read books like this that make us feel, that make us taste, that make us smell Christmas, or just whatever it is, right? Whatever the subject is, and in this case, Christmas. Anytime, any year, whether it's this year or next year or 10 years ago, whatever we're feeling at the moment, I think we miss the opportunity to actually go and feel. Maybe we read these stories to our kids, or maybe we don't. But to actually let that sink in, talking about colors, and it's one of my favorite imageries. There's a poem by one of my favorite poets, Dale Fredrickson. It's his little girl, he talks about her, "Daddy, let's pick up a color and color the world. Let's pick up a crayon and color the world." And I keep a box of crayons on my desk as a reminder of that, of what color are we going to pick up today and color in this world. And it's all of them. It's not just the ones we think are pretty, right? It's right. All of them. It's the full box. And I love how you describe that. It's this full range of colors that we feel and see and taste and hear and just experience that brings this story to color, to life, to everything. And to sit in that, to be willing to sit in those moments of blue, of grief, so that we can find joy and celebration within, so that we can just be present in what hurts is okay. Because then we're better to be present when the colors are good and joyful, but we can also be present when they're not so fun and not so vibrant, but they're there. And that's what makes us human. That's what makes us who we are, is that full range of color, that full range of just being human.
It is, I think that it has been the biggest surprise for me, and I may have talked about this a little bit in the last time I was on, but is you bring up how adults should engage like books like this or whatever. It's crazy to me to know how children's books affect people of all ages. Like I have story after story of people who don't have kids, or people who are, their kids are out of their home, and and they're walking through cancer treatment, and they're reading a book that I wrote, that for kids, and they're reading it for every day before they go into chemotherapy. And those kinds of narratives or stories, I mean, I've been blown away by that. And it makes sense to me because I feel like I'm still connected to some of the stories that I read as a kid, but none of them are about God. None of them are about my faith. Like they're all they're all about imaginary places and these made up circumstances or whatever. And so it is, it's been a gift to maybe fill a little bit of space for somebody, and a need for somebody to give them words that they feel give them a little bit of hope in certain moments, whether they, I didn't write my book When God Made You for somebody who was going through chemotherapy. Like that was not even a part of my thing. I didn't write it. I had another person who was a pastor who was walking with somebody through, hospice care. The woman was 100 years old. And somehow, like, my book ended up on her side table. And she asked the pastor to read my book before, to her every day. And she read it like 3 hours before she passed. Like, I mean, there was nothing, in no way, shape, or form did I like write that book thinking that somebody would read it as they were passing on to the other side. But sometimes simple, good words transcend. And that's what I hope that this book will do for Christmas, because I feel like we need good, simple words that transcend our experience, because right now we're all feeling a lot. We're all walking through the same drama, but then also we all have our individual drama. We all have our individual stories that are, moving with us. And so I hope these words transcend and people see the bigger, deeper meaning, and they feel like they're a part of the Christmas story. So.
Well, I think it's not only your words that do that, but I also think that the imagery that you have in the book does an amazing job at that. When I was reading through it and I got to the image, the manger image that you have of just Mary and Joseph and Jesus, like I was like, I want to rip this out and put it on my wall, because it would look so good on my wall. And that's the image I want people to see. Like that, just like, when that one came up, that one in the blue one, the line about Elvis, the blue Elvis, like that, just like, just definitely, and it's just the imagery of it, just like, I think the imagery spoke to me almost as much as the words did, just because it provided such comfort. But yet the way you end your book is very incarnational in saying that Christmas is in you. Mm-hmm. And like, I think that's the one thing I think sometimes gets missed in church Christmas Eve services, is that the incarnation came to be with us and is also in us.
Right.
And we're called to share that light. There's a reason why we sing Silent Night with the light on, with the candles being held. There's a reason we do that. And it's not because like it's a thing. It's because we're recognizing the light in us and how we can punch holes in the darkness with just our small little light. And I just think the way you ended this was very powerful and hopeful for things to come. Like I just felt like after I had finished that, I felt like the plane had landed and there was just this nice how like when you land on the plane you just feel like I'm here. Like that's how I felt when I finished reading the book. It's like it just felt right and it felt good.
Well, from a creative standpoint, when I decided to make the last color you, something came, it made everything else make sense. Like it just like it felt like, oh wow, okay, this makes it personal. This is the Christmas story. Like, this is at the end of the day, this is why there is a Christmas story. So Christmas can be in us. And so using that imagery to kind of paint to end it and to bring it to it, just it sort of wrote itself to some degree. I had to work against being a little too cheesy at times. Like there's lots of things that you kind of get caught up in, but it's I have found it to be a beautiful gift to write books that are for kids about God. It has given me as much life as I hope it gives other people. Like it really is I look forward to getting to do what I do. So.
I like it so much. And I think the thing that is the constant reminder for me, because I get in my head and I get in this, I've got to be an adult and I've got to act this way and I've got to do these things. And so often, especially pastors of, I got to go read this deep theological book, or I got to go read so-and-so. And I have found your books in particular and a few others, oh no, we can do this here too. And it may be labeled a children's book, but by God, it's for me. Yeah. And these things, the words and the imagery that you write and your illustrator comes up with impact me, and just as much or more than some other really self-important theologian who writes books this big. Who cares, right? Just say the things you need to say. And that's what I love about what you're doing, about a good poets. Song. Yeah,
it's when a song communicates something so profound in a really simple or a very clever way. Like it kind of, the lights come on, it connects to us. Like we want to hear it over. Like it is. Sometimes we do get lost in this heady, and certainly there's a necessity for that. I'm not disagreeing.
Right. I agree. Yeah,
there is something transcendent about simple words. I will let you guys in on it. It's not really a secret anymore, but it's a little bit of a secret. We all like. I know you both love Rachel Held Evans. And Rachel, 3 weeks before Rachel became sick, the last thing that she sent off to her agent was an idea for a children's book. And after she passed away, a couple months after, I was asked to finish her books. And her book, it's called What Is God Like? And it comes out in May. And it lends itself to the beauty that you were just talking about. It's a type of writing that it doesn't rhyme. I swear, like, my name's on the book, but I swear when you read it, I really believe you'll hear Rachel. Like, I really do. Like, there were moments in that process. We've all been walking through our own hard year, and I've had a really hard year. And in that journey, the one bright thing was doing this really hard thing for my friend. And it was the most beautiful gift to sit and take Rachel's idea and bring it to life and to expand it. And I told Dan, that Dan's her husband, and I told Dan, I was like, I swear there were moments when I felt like I was channeling her. But that was hard, but it was the most beautiful gift amid this painful year. And so even in the process of writing what I write, it brings light to the hardships that I'm going through. It brings light. So I'm hopeful that those little moments, that those little things, that they add up and that they transcend into other people's experiences, and that other people find hope. But you're going to love that book. I mean, it's a profound, beautiful testament to who Rachel was. So,
Matthew, thank you for sharing that, because it's such a reminder, if we're not in this alone, especially in those very just broken heart moments, we're not in this alone. Whether it's the saints who have gone before us, the people surround us, the Holy Spirit, call it what you will, we're not alone. And those hopeful reminders of we are present with one another. We are present in this moment. Heartbroken, hopeful, heavy hearts. However, we're not alone. And that's such a beautiful reminder. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, I guess at the end of the day, that's what Christmas is. That's the message of Christmas, that we aren't alone.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah. And again, finding my conviction in the last 11 months of trying to find words to say to people, every 6 days or 7 days, right? Of, I don't have to use so many. Mm-hmm. If it takes me 2,000 words to say something on a Sunday, I've said too much. Can I do it can I say the same thing in 800 words? Can I say the same thing in 5 minutes that I said in 20? And it be hopeful, and it be impactful, and it be what I needed to say, and leave the rest out.
Well, we spend so much time trying to fill in the holes for people,
right?
Answer the questions,
mm-hmm.
Make everything make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, that's not life.
No.
I mean, we don't have the capability of filling in somebody else's, cracks, or filling in, whatever broken places they have going on.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it just helps to give less and be present.
Right.
Because that's what brings us hope. Mm-hmm. That's what brings me hope when I am having a really hard day. I don't want, the last thing I want is someone coming in and bringing me answers, like, or like judging me for feeling all the things that I'm feeling. I just telling me they understand, telling me they get it. They don't have all the answers. I know. I mean, all of those things. It's like when you walk with somebody who has suffered a really deep loss of a loved one. You don't have words to say to those people, but you're there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
When a friend or a person you love, you're there. And being there becomes the word. It becomes the answer. It becomes the bond that fixes the cracks, because that's what they're going to remember. They're not going to remember what you said or what you didn't say. They're going to remember that, yeah, you hugged me, you embraced me, you were there. So look for ways. All of us should be looking for ways to be there, whatever that means in whatever person's story.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, thank you so much for your time and sharing with us. We could record for hours just having conversations, and I think maybe like 3 or 4 people would enjoy the conversations we're having. but definitely appreciate you and the time that you've given us today to talk about your book, and of course a lot of other things. And you can find All the Colors of Christmas pretty much anywhere you can find a book online, or if you've got a local bookstore in your town, pressure your local bookstore to order it. And
if you happen to go to Target and you hear this annoying voice of mine, it's a commercial. There's going to be a commercial that's going to run through Christmas. So yeah,
it's my favorite thing to go in Target, on the big screen and be like, I know that voice. Where I know him. And I know him. He's on the podcast. They're like, Dad, we don't care.
I know.
Let me have my moment, children.
That's like I literally had that very thing with the last book. I went in and you have to wait through so many things when you're trying to, and of course it feels like we walked in at the time where it had just shown, and so my kids thought we were waiting forever, and they just did not care nearly as much as I wanted them to. And as an adult, you're looking up at the screen, and people are wondering, like, why are you standing in the children's book section of Target, looking up at the screen, waiting? Like, it's so I give myself one opportunity to do that each time it happens, because it's a little weird.
Well, I will admit, when it plays and I'm in Target, I will go stand under the screen and just wait for people to come and get autographs.
That's amazing.
Maybe he vaguely resembles them. I don't know.
So great.
So Matt, thank you for the time. We're gonna have a link at least to the Amazon, so people can pick up the book on Amazon. We just encourage our listeners to do that, to support Matt and the great books, so he can keep writing more books. That's always a great way to do that. And then also on our website, check out all the great content that we have, and things that we've had been going for the last year. I know we didn't record last week. That's because we took a mental health break, and with everything going on, we had no words to say because we didn't know what to say, and we needed that space. And so for those of you that were freaking out and texting Zach or myself why we didn't have a show last week, that is why we didn't have a show last week, because we needed a mental break.
It was 2 people. There wasn't. It was 2
hey, those 2 people matter. So for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
First, guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video and push that thumbs up.